So this is what I think you really should be doing, and that will craft your path to a niche area of practice that will be very successful for you.
So, Dan, welcome to the You Are a Lawyer podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So, I want to talk all about this business that you're running. It's called Legably, which is
That's correct.
It's really fun to pronounce. Lawyers like words. And so I'm going to spell it out. Legably, right?
Correct.
So not legal, not legally, Legably.
That's correct.
Why did you create this platform and what is it?
So it started, and it is a made-up word, which is great from a trademark perspective always, right? I've been a practicing lawyer for 8 years now, and I was at a trust and estate practice right out of law school, and I was getting all of these engagements where I needed to have local counsel in other states drafting documents, filing deeds, doing those sorts of things that I just couldn't handle. So I found myself Googling attorneys near where my clients were moving to and calling them up out of the blue, asking them if they could help. Normally they would say yes. It was work coming in the door. And we would communicate via email, over the phone, and at the end of it I would mail them a check, and we would get everything done. And after doing that a handful of times, I thought to myself that there was a much better way to do this. And back in 2016, 2017, freelance platforms were very different, particularly for the legal profession. So you started to see them come out for graphic designers and software engineers and folks who are very computer literate by nature, and they really gravitated towards those platforms, but you hadn't really seen them yet adopted for professionals like attorneys and paralegals and legal assistants. So that was the genesis of Legably. That's where it started. And we got launched towards the end of 2017 into 2018 after building it with my co-founder. And flash forward to today, we have just under 7,000 users from across the country, attorneys, paralegals, and law students who haven't yet passed the bar but may be able to clerk depending on their state bar rules. They may be able to do limited scope practice, and certainly they'll be attorneys soon enough, full-fledged attorneys soon enough. So we want to give them a leg up in starting to add to their resume and work on projects for attorneys. And the idea behind the platform is that attorneys and legal staffing firms, in-house counsel companies use Legably to hire freelance attorneys and paralegals for short-term engagements. Contract through the platform, share documents, message each other, and then get paid through the platform all in one place. So if you're a solo practitioner, and I am now, so I still have my law practice, I'm a solo practitioner, I can have attorneys in every state. So I have licensed attorneys handling work that requires an attorney licensed in a specific state if I have a client with a need there. Multi-jurisdictional work where I need someone perhaps with a different specialty, but also in a different jurisdiction. I can post a project and hire them and get the work done. If I need a document drafted that I'm just not familiar with, I can hire a paralegal or an attorney who may already have it done and can quickly transact over Legably and share what they have, edit it for me, draft for me, and then I can incorporate that into my work. So it's designed to make work more efficient for attorneys, whether you're a solo or in a large firm or in-house, and to allow more work to get done and to contribute to your bottom line.
So I'm listening and this makes sense, but it's 2023, right? In 2017, were people like, who cares? Why do we need this? People aren't getting jobs this way.
That's right. Especially in the legal field, it was not a quick adoption. This wasn't something that, and it isn't something that continues to just sprout up overnight. The legal profession, as you know, is a very conservative profession by nature. How people get hired is very similar to how it was decades and decades ago. The use of technology in law practices is always a challenge, certainly for lawyers to use the technology. It's an even bigger challenge for software companies to sell into the legal profession and offer solutions for lawyers and paralegals. So that challenge continues. You're starting to see, certainly the profession move in a direction where they understand they can get more work done. They can handle client matters more efficiently. They can bill more when they adopt technology and they use it in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a lawyer speaking to a lawyer, I worked in big law for 5 years and I recorded my time. Well, I still record my time because it's just ingrained in me. But that recording of my time was how I knew I needed a virtual assistant, right?
Mhm.
I was like, wait, I'm spending 12 hours a week on admin work. Who can I outsource this to? Is that a similar thought pattern for people who sign up to work with Legably? Like you gave the example of I need some work, maybe a paralegal could do it, but could a solo practitioner really say, oh my God, I have too much work. Let me outsource this to somebody and work with Legably?
Absolutely, and that surge workflow we like to call internally use cases is very real for a lot of lawyers. You may not need a specialized person. You may not need someone in a different state. You may just need someone to help you with what's coming in. And if you don't have an option like Legally, you just have to send the clients to another lawyer. Or you take them on and you can't really handle their matters in a good way, which is of course not the prudent thing to do.
Yeah.
And so this offers you the opportunity to scale up quickly without having to hire full-time people, engaging with other people who don't necessarily want to work for you full-time, but they're looking for freelance engagements. So it works well for everyone. And you can handle what comes in. You can continue to bill hourly. You can bill on a fixed fee basis. And Legably adapts, and lawyers using Legably are adapting as fee structures are changing too. Many lawyers still bill by the hour, and there are a lot of reasons for that, even though it's very unpopular outside of the legal profession. But we are seeing an increase in fixed or alternative fee arrangements. And when you do that, you build into the budget what your time, what the resources are going to cost. So you're more able to flexibly push some work off to other attorneys, knowing that their cost is going to be X. You're still able to bill Y. So it doesn't hurt your bottom line, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still wrapped up in a fixed fee that perhaps your clients find more attractive and want to work with you because of.
And one of the things I think is so amazing about Legably is the fact that most lawyers are really good with lawyering, not too good with the business aspect, right? And so if you know your numbers to know I need help, I need to outsource this, I need to work with someone else, you probably are already pretty proactive as a business owner. Have you found that to be the case?
Certainly. And there are attorneys who have created virtual law firms, and that model has become more prevalent now. And those attorneys certainly are more willing to try something like Legably right away. They don't need to be sold on the concept. And in fact, their business is built around this idea of having attorneys in all 50 states, even though they're a one person law office and they're just affiliated with 50 lawyers. They went out and built those relationships. When Legably came along, we allowed them to have those relationships permanently on the marketplace and be able to interact with those lawyers on an on-demand basis. So it's a much more organized way of doing what they're already doing. But those were attorneys and firms that were structured for this new model. Legably is a great solution for them. But of course, there are many more attorneys out there who are either solos or in big firms where the business aspect is always a challenge because you're in the business of practicing law, plus you have to run this business on the side. And we hope that we can make life easier for those attorneys in terms of managing their work and getting paid for that work.
Absolutely. So I'm on the Legably website right now, right? And very simple, very easy to use, hire a professional, post a job. What made you say, yes, I'll do this, right? You have a co founder, you guys are discussing it, and then you're like, I kind of think I'll take the risk. Like, what
Yeah.
makes you decide, yeah, I will take a risk and be a pioneer and do this?
Well, it was, I didn't want to let the opportunity go by, and I wanted to jump in with the least amount of risk possible to get something out there and to see if there'd be user adoption. And we started with a basic landing page before there was a website, and we had several hundred signups fairly quickly without spending a lot of money. We didn't have a budget for this, so those were people who were coming to us starting organically. We had a little bit of press and blog coverage, which started to send some traffic to us. So people understood the concept, and from that, we decided to go and build it. Now, hindsight is always 2020. I probably would have taken an even leaner approach at the time, moved faster, and done half as much at each stage just to push the product out there and to get feedback from lawyers, because that, of course, is the best way to iterate on these products.
Mm-hmm.
But if I knew then, what I know now, if that was the case for all of us, life would be good, right? So we just
Yeah.
have to adapt and overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So Dan, let's go back a little bit further. You actually are you from Rhode Island? Or I know you went to law school there.
I am. I'm from here, and I went to Roger Williams Law School here as well.
Okay. So when you were in undergrad or even high school, did you know you wanted to be a lawyer or what made you decide to look towards law school?
Yeah, I come from a family of lawyers. I didn't walk into their firm. We all have gone in different paths in the practice of law. But when I came back to Rhode Island, I actually went to high school in Florida. I moved back to Rhode Island to go to college. And when I was in college at Providence College, I ran for the state legislature. And I won a seat in the House of Representatives when I was 21. So before I had gone to law school or even considered it, I was actually a lawmaker. And that was an interesting approach. And so while I was there, I decided that I always thought about perhaps going to law school. And at that point, I decided that was the right move for me. And so while I was in the House and a lawmaker, I started at law school. And then I left the House shortly after my I graduated in 2015 and I left in 2016. So I have a very interesting path into the start of practicing law.
Yeah.
And my practice, aside from Legably, which still remains active, is mostly focused on executive compensation and employment law and handling outside counsel for businesses because I have, I've been baptized by fire, so to speak, on the business side of things. So I find that really does help. And it's an interesting segue from the startup world into advising business clients because I understand a lot of what they're going through.
You know, hearing you explain it, it makes sense to me, right? But I'm preparing for the recording and I'm like, legislature to business owner to, right?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, these
Uh,
two sound so disparate. I'm like, how do they work? I mean, you're the only common denominator. I'm like, how do you make all these things?
Yeah, there really is nothing in common with any of them.
Yeah.
Even the lawmaking to law practice, you'd be surprised. But except for one thing, which is when you and I don't advise go into politics before business, and people should do whatever they want. But the one thing you do learn in politics, especially when you're running a state legislature, a legislative campaign in a state as small as Rhode Island, is you are a one-person band, and you are very quickly in the span of 6 months putting together what is in all effects of business, raising money, spending money, setting a budget, hiring vendors, in what could amount to several tens of thousands of dollars very quickly. People are giving you money because in this case they want to see you get elected, not because they want a return on that investment in the business sense.
Yeah.
And then one day it's all over. And then you have to figure out how to sustain that, and it becomes a giant marketing exercise, and it's an exercise in operations and communications and working with other people. And so it really is a crash course in running an organization, even if you don't have a huge team, even if it's just you, from the standpoint of understanding finances, setting budgets, spending money. And so that does take a bit of the edge off when you look at the idea of, when you think of the idea of starting a business.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, that's such a challenge. Oh, maybe I've always worked for someone in my career. I wouldn't know how to handle the rest of it. Well, in my case, I ran, and I still couldn't tell you why I decided to run for office. I guess it seemed like a good idea at the time, but once you do something like that, you say, well, if I could do that, then what's so tough about starting a business? What's so tough about starting a law practice? So it was a very everything was out of order. I was serving with attorneys who were in the state house and had been practicing attorneys for decades, and now are sitting next to me. They certainly did it in the more traditional path. There are a lot of benefits to doing it that way. I'm not saying you have to be a rebel, but there are many ways to do things, and it's a bit of a non-traditional path, but it certainly has been an interesting one.
Yeah, I definitely hear the non-traditional aspect, which is why I was so excited to talk to you. But you know what else I'm really enjoying? And it's, this is coming on like my 125th interview. And I'm like,
Congrats.
lawyers are risk takers. You
Yeah.
are certainly a risk taker. Like, I think that we think we're risk averse because we really like rules and like to know
Yeah.
the guidelines and the parameters. But the truth is, we learn about the worst case scenario in law school. And I think
Yeah.
it kind of helps us to take more risk because
Yeah.
we know, okay, well, at least I didn't get hit with a hammer while I was walking to the train. At least that didn't happen. So
Yeah.
anything else that happens, I can handle.
They say law school just takes perfectly normal human beings and turns them into petrified people who are scared of their own shadow. That's really, law school's sole accomplishment, and it really is true in many respects. But that's why I think in counseling businesses, and this is true for attorneys who haven't started businesses but then just are corporate or business attorneys. It's very important to understand where your client's coming from. And it really helps to be involved in the business world to understand the risk taking, because there's always risks to be taken. You can't go in and advise a business client and say, well, the answer here is don't take any risks. You won't be their lawyer for very long. They won't have a business for very long. So you have to understand where they're coming from, the best way to get there, chart out the minefield for them, and if they have to go through it, you say, well, I'll be there with you. I'm just saying that try to do X, Y, and Z. And certainly coming from the business world really does help in providing that advice to clients.
Okay. So that is a good segue into you working in executive compensation.
Mm,
Now, I worked in a corporate law firm, and there were corporate leases and all these things, and I actually ended up on the IP side with patents and all of that.
mm.
How do you get into executive compensation? Like, was that something you sought after, or did you narrow down after you started practicing?
No, I started narrowing down while I was practicing and while Legably was still getting off the ground. So we're talking 5 or 6 years ago, I was asked to join an executive search firm, but not as a lawyer. I was an attorney. I had a few clients on the side, but I hadn't really started my practice. And so while everything else was going on, I'd left the state house at this point, so that wasn't going on. But while everything else was going on, I got into executive search. And I worked with C-suite level executives who were being recruited into roles, mostly at private equity run companies. So these are very intense roles, fast growing companies. The search processes were very aggressive. And so I found myself negotiating all of their agreements as a headhunter, as a recruiter, not really as a lawyer, even though I was doing that on the side. And so I left there and decided to craft my practice aside from Legably, around this idea of advising executives and employees. It doesn't really have to be executives, even though the term is executive compensation out there, but really employees of all levels, negotiating on their behalf for their offer letters, their employment contracts, their compensation plans, creating long-term incentive plans for them and their companies, and negotiating severance and exits and transitions as high-performing executives get recruited out on a fairly consistent basis. They're coming back, and now we have to negotiate their next deal. As a recruiter, I couldn't talk to them once we had placed them in a role because we had an engagement with the company that hired them. But as their attorney, they can call me at any time. And so that was how I got into that practice. And I've discovered that it really is a boutique. There are attorneys out there, many in big firms, but they all are advising the companies. And so they're not going to go represent the executives because their firm has the bigger client on the other side of the table that they have to negotiate against, which is understandable. And so there are folks like me, and in my practice, I come in and I help negotiate their interests. I liken it to being a sports agent for employees and executives. That's just something I say to myself to make it seem a lot more glamorous than it actually is. Because stock option plans are only so exciting. Mm-hmm. But it's a great practice. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy that there is absolutely a business aspect to it because it's all about crafting compensation to relate to business objectives and understanding how the business works and how my clients can fit into it. And so it's a great area of practice, and it dovetails very well with my startup adventures.
And you're running this firm by yourself, or are the owner of it? You're working virtually at home, or what?
That's right. So it's a solo practice, and I use Legably and other networks to or my personal network in addition to Legably to find attorneys, especially in my practice where I will have a need for local counsel in other states. It really is a national practice. So I have to build a roster of attorneys in other states who can provide that local counsel sign off, can provide that local practice that's needed for my client. And so I have a real need for that virtual firm that Legably provides. But other than that, it's just me.
I love that. So you are co-founder of Legably, but also you use their services. That
That's
is
right.
the
I'm a customer.
best. Yeah, that's the best advertisement ever. All right. So, Dan, I want to ask one more thing here.
Hmm.
So, the podcast audience is new lawyers, 5 years
Hmm.
practicing or less, or law students.
Hmm.
What would you say to them about what they can do with their law degrees?
Well, the true answer, but it's not very helpful, is you really can do anything. Don't think that it's going to be that you have to be in a firm, you have to be practicing, you have to be going to court. Some people love litigating. Some people are born to be transactional lawyers. They just don't make any TV shows about that. And so you come out of law school and you may think, I have to go to court, I have to do litigation. You don't see transactional lawyers on billboards, so you have an idea of what the profession is. And my suggestion is, as a new lawyer, you broaden your horizons as much as possible. If you're in law school, intern, make yourself a resource to as many places as possible. Don't think of it as giving away free labor. Think of it as you figuring out what other people are doing and deciding for yourself if that's what you want to do or not. And then, figure out, if you do want to practice, who is your role model, who has the ideal practice, the ideal lifestyle, maybe the ideal income, and then work backwards to figure out how to replicate that. And everyone always will say, develop a niche. That's absolutely true, but that's not very practical advice for someone on day one who's just passed the bar. So this is what I think you really should be doing, and that will craft your path to a niche area of practice that will be very successful for you.
So, everyone, remember that you can do anything with your law degree, but also keep your eyes open for different interests that jump out at you, basically.
Absolutely.
Because you could end up working at a firm and then opening a business and then
Absolutely.
running your own firm and all of the stuff. So,
Yeah. A law degree is a great credential to have in the business world. If you never practice, if you go inactive, you're still an attorney by training. It counts for a lot. I've seen that in the recruiting world. I've seen that in the business world. So don't think that you're boxed into any one particular career path. And of course, it can always change.
Yes. And if you're listening and you're like, that sounds terrifying, I can do anything, it's exciting, right?
Yeah.
You have to frame it in a way of it's not terrifying. It's the fact that you get to choose what you want to do and you can change your mind.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's the reason this whole podcast exists, because you're a lawyer. You can do anything with your law degree, but you get to decide, right? So see that as freedom, not, oh my God, where's the guidelines? Instead, it's freedom and flexibility. So
absolutely.
Will you tell everyone where they can find Legably and your resources?
Absolutely. So legably.com, as you said earlier, it's legably.com. It's free to sign up and use. So encourage attorneys to get on there. Feel free to send us a message at support@legably.com if you have any ideas, issues, suggestions, or comments. That's really the most valuable information we can get as feedback from our users, especially those in the legal profession. So I invite everyone to try it out and let us know what they think.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dan. Have a great day. Bye.
Likewise, thanks for having me. This is what I think you really should be doing, and that will craft your path to a niche area of practice that will be very successful for you.